Meetings in a couple of minutes. I thought before we begin the formal session, we can just share some thoughts on what we did yesterday in terms of the task forces. There have been some questions. The good news is that every country hosts, in the last 10 years, has hosted the T20 and therefore the G20, or the G20 and therefore the T20 only once. So that is the reality. You only hosted once in 20 years, so it is not as if anyone comes with set formulas of the past. We rely on the previous presidencies, and we have 6 co-chairs from the Indonesian presidency, so that we have a degree of continuity in what we do. They had, of course, suggested methods of what they applied, which were different to the previous one, and which were different to the one before that. So we basically should agree on the principles that there should be more than one person reading an abstract. There should be a group of people reading abstracts so that we can remove biases and personal bad days from the business of reading papers. So what we have done in, for example, some task forces is to the secretariats will segregate the abstracts received into work streams. People can raise their hands if they want to be reading certain abstracts for those work streams, and we will send it to them in a segregated manner so that everyone is not loaded with reading all of them. We could divide the total number of the full set of abstracts into task forces, and within the task forces into work streams, and we could have a few people looking at them. The secretariat is obviously also going to be doing their own assessments and will assist you whenever you want to reach out to them. If you need more eyes, we will provide you those eyes for each of the task force members. If you believe there's a certain work stream which does not have interest within the group, please lean on the secretariat, and we will assign folks who will do that task for you. So that's one part. But please arrive at your own formulas. Some of you have only 50 odd abstracts. Some of us have 250 abstracts to go through. So there is no one formula, but principle of more than one eye for one paper is a good principle, that more than just one person assesses one paper. And of course, in case there is any requirement for more eyes on the job, we will offer you those eyes. Please reach out to the secretariat. So that's the first part. Since the Su Sherpa is here and you are wondering why are we discussing this, sir, we have received 1,000 abstracts, and we have to, and it's still counting, and we have to find a way of managing those so that we can at the end of the day have 200 good policy briefs or 150 good policy briefs. And by the way, that's also something someone asked, should we set a ceiling of numbers? No. Quality will determine the briefs we pursue, and that should be the only criteria. Good quality should not be rejected by any false artificial ceiling, and bad quality should not be condoned just because we want to get to a number. The advantage with India is that we don't have to prove numbers to anyone. We live with numbers every day. So numbers is not the criteria. Quality should be the basis. So that's because these were some thoughts someone has posed. Some people have asked me. So I'm just letting you know that the task force must decide their formula. To each his own. I have shared what we are doing in our task force. Work streams, volunteers for each work stream, they go through it, and then we decide, the secretariat will talk to the authors, take it forward. One last point. There might be very good briefs you might read, but it might be a single author brief. Don't reject it. We will find ways of pairing up others to make it more international in dimension. A good idea should not go waste. Just because it is sent by one person, we will find ways of pairing people and making it more international in dimension. So we should also keep that in mind, that we have time to do all of this, and we will assist you when you want us to find the other authors. We will do it for you, but I'm sure with the wealth of talent within each task force, you will have enough in your networks to help us do that as well. So up to you. It's a voluntary, you are volunteering, so I don't want to put pressure on you. If you need more people, more eyes on the job, more hands on the job, the secretariat will backstop you. So that's something, that's just a housekeeping announcement and also a time filler announcement. So now with that, let me first invite the chair of T20 India, Ambassador Chinoy, to come and speak to us and his thoughts for this morning. And thereafter, we will go to our keynote address and speaker. Ambassador Chinoy.
Morning, everyone. I'm very happy to see you all again, and I hope you are well rested and ready for day 2. Allow me to express my warm welcome to you, Ambassador Abhay Thakur. Thank you for joining us this morning, and it's a real pleasure to once again have the opportunity to interact with so many of you. We, in fact, had 5 plenary sessions yesterday, and all the 7 task forces also had intense discussions. And these discussions obviously involved the best minds in the world today. Our conversations have highlighted the importance of giving a new meaning and purpose to the G20 framework. And this is for a challenging era. Why is it so challenging? It's very challenging because all the known factors or vectors of a globalized world are under challenge. Obviously, trade is under challenge, technology is under challenge, finance is under challenge, and human resources and their mobility and movement is also under challenge. And I am tempted to kind of summarize the areas, the sort of crossroads of conflict as the 6 T's, more than the 4 that I cited. The first T is obviously of trade, where we have seen virtually every aspect of trade today being challenged by partners as well as rivals. We see the same, in technology, where technology is being weaponized at a very rapid rate. But there is also the T of tenets and narratives, values that are under challenge. And it's important that we do not forget the 4th T of terrorism. For at the end of the day, it's not just economics that matters, security also matters. And unless we have peace and stability in our societies, free of the scourge of terrorism, it would be very difficult for any society to progress. So we must not forget the T of terrorism as well. And then we have obviously the lack of trust, the 5th T, the lack of trust. A number of speakers yesterday alluded to the requirements of trust, the definition of trust, perhaps a measurement of trust as well. And I think we might give some thought to the definition of trust. And lastly, it's the T of territory. There are territorial disputes around the world, the war in Ukraine, a number of challenges in our part of the world on account of belligerence or unilateralism or militarization on the part of some. And so therefore, I would describe these 6 T's as the greatest challenges today. Prime Minister Narendra Modi's vision is to make the G20 action-oriented, decisive, and ambitious. The G20 is unique in that perhaps unlike any other presidency, it has actually ignited and excited the minds of millions of people around this country. And we have never seen this in the past, that the common people of a G20 president are directly involved in the celebration of the G20 presidency, and not just in symbolic terms, but also in substantive terms, contributing along the way. I particularly recall the words of the Sherpa yesterday, who said that there is no other body or engagement group better equipped to mold India's priorities of the G20 than the Think20. And he obviously did not refer simply to the Think20 India core group. He was referring to all of you who have come from different parts of the world. So more power to your elbow. Minister Hardeep Puri gave us an overview yesterday of the challenges the world faces in every facet of globalization, including the infirmities of the current multilateral system. Now, in my view, the G20 can neither subsume nor replace or outright challenge the existing multilateral order, and that is not the intention. We look to work together with that system, with the UN system, but the key point here is to avoid making the mistakes of the prevailing multilateral systems. The UN Security Council appears hoist on its own petard. We see that it is falling on its own sword time and again because of the privileged participation of a few in the UN Security Council. Elsewhere, we have seen the WTO and the WHO weakened by either the politics of trade or the politics of the pandemic. But at the end of the day, it hurts the common people around the world. The G20 today has a genuine opportunity to work alongside existing multilateral institutions and organizations, but to provide a unique opportunity to all major nations, including the contending ones and the contending economies, to step away from the traffic jam or the gridlock, as you might call it, on a highway, to pull away into an apron that we can create where they can maneuver, they can sit together, they can talk, away from that jam that has been created on the highway. So we are like that apron where we can pull ourselves away from the existing gridlock or traffic jam that's been created. Friends, there are also some other unique features about India's Think20 engagement group, which, again, I'm very certain that you have noticed yourselves. Firstly, the Indian Think20 has been working very actively from day one with all the other engagement groups. This is something, again, unique to the Indian context. Secondly, in keeping with India's vision, we are guided in our work by the mantra of inclusivity horizontally across the world, across the gender gap, and vertically in the country, taking the G20 and the Think20 process to all the four corners of this country and involving, as I said before, millions of people that seek to have their voice heard within India and across the global south. We are also very actively in touch with the T7, and it augurs very well that we are working with Japan in this case, the current G7 chair, and Japan is one of our closest strategic partners, and we are therefore off to a very good start there. A natural partnership is going to provide the necessary impetus to this T7, T20 dialogue. And there is one other unique feature. I'm not sure if you have noticed it, but Dr. Samir Saran had alluded to it right in the beginning, that the chair and the secretariat are in different places. But there is reasoning behind this, and I think it's Prime Minister Modi's vision to get all the think tanks in India to work together, to make it a habit of cooperation, such that we can really deal with the biggest challenges before India, before the entire world, in a more efficient manner. So I think I can say that we are really working seamlessly together from day one, and I'm profiting through my association with this gentleman here, who's best described as a human dynamo. He is up at 3 a.m. in the morning doing his work to support you all. Between now and September this year, I hope we can all put our heads together to generate new ideas. As Prime Minister Modi said in the concluding session of the Voice of Global South Summit yesterday, India will give voice to the Global South and ensure that the world takes a human-centric approach to globalization. The world, in fact, in my view, needs new values, new ethics, and it's required to adopt a values-based approach to globalization today, where we step away from this deep desire to simply profit and make money, to garner for ourselves all the resources possible, and to move towards sharing and caring. So I think that's where I'd like to see the G20 process go, in accordance with India's philosophy. And there I think India, with your support, Think20 in particular, is best placed to, in fact, create a new moral compass for this world today. With that, I would now like to say that we will have the opportunity to hear Ambassador Abhay Thakur. And thank you all very much for being here this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Chinoy. It's now my honor and privilege to invite our speaker this morning, the Su Sherpa for the G20 Indian presidency, Ambassador Abhay Thakur. He's been India's top diplomat in Nigeria, in Mauritius. He has, of course, manned the post that was in charge of our relationships with our other neighbors. And in his stint earlier, he was with the Foreign Minister's office and had a view across the ministry. Mr. Abhay Thakur, of course, has also been involved in the previous 2 cycles of the G20 and in many ways represents continuity, the word that has been used yesterday. And because of his own interest in the subject and pursuit of multilateralism and ways to revive it, he is also someone who's going to inject new energy into the Indian presidency. So we are delighted that he has spared some time from his very busy schedule and joined us this morning to give us his views on what to expect in the year ahead, and perhaps also give us some homework for what he expects from us. So may I invite you now, Ambassador Abhay Thakur, to speak to us?
Ambassador Sujan Chinoy, the T20 lead, Dr. Samir Saran, head of the ORF and also the T20 Secretariat, members of T20 group and all the organizations which are connected with T20, all my seniors present here, distinguished invitees from G20 and other countries, friends, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, I would like to extend my heartiest congratulations and recognize the exemplary work done by India's T20 team to mobilize quickly, finalize the T20 agenda, and develop the T20 calendar along with the necessary background paperwork, launch the website and the social media handles within a span of less than 3 months. The T20 work has been, and the transition has been seamless. It appears as if India's T20 team has been at it for a long time, and many of us would not know that the amount of hard work that has been put in is really phenomenal. While applauding the new T20 members for their dynamism, I also want to acknowledge the stellar role of the long-serving T20 members who have given the necessary knowledge support and ensured that T20 becomes fully active on day 1. So I would, in the very beginning, want to give a big hand to T20 team. Colleagues, India's G20 presidency comes at a time when the world faces multiple challenges ranging from climate change and lack of progress in SDGs to economic slowdown, debt distress, uneven pandemic recovery, food and energy insecurity, and geopolitical conflicts. Yet in every challenge lies an opportunity. The world is looking at G20 as a ray of hope in providing fresh perspectives and durable solutions to global problems. As Prime Minister Modi said at the Bali summit, we would like our G20 presidency to be inclusive, ambitious, action-oriented, and decisive. Our G20 logo and theme reflect this thought, with the Earth representing India's pro-planet approach and the lotus representing growth amid challenges. The theme Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, one Earth, one family, one future, drawn from the Maha Upanishad, reflects our intent to carry all countries with us and leave no one behind. The theme also brings out the value of all life, human, animal, plant, microorganisms, and their interconnectedness. As the fastest growing economy, large economy in the world, in a largely gloomy global economic scenario, India carries the requisite weight and ability to seek and garner support for quality outcomes in the G20. Yet, the G20 can work only by consensus, and we have often seen G20 respond better to immediate concerns rather than long-term strategic challenges. In this context, India as a G7 partner, BRICS and Quad member, SCO and G20 presidency, and a voice of the Global South, having presided over the Security Council last month, hopes to serve as a trusted and effective bridge for developing countries and advanced economies. Our G20 presidency is our most high-profile international endeavor ever. It is also for the first time that 4 developing countries, Indonesia, India, Brazil, and South Africa, would be presiding over the G20 in a row. In addition to regular G20 participants, we have invited 9 guest countries: Bangladesh, Egypt, Mauritius, Netherlands, Nigeria, Oman, Singapore, Spain, and UAE, and 14 international organizations, including 2 based in New Delhi, the ISA and the CDRI, for the G20 summit and presidency meetings. The summit in New Delhi will have the largest ever participation in any presidency so far, including from Africa with 6 invitees: South Africa, the AU chair, Comoros, Nepal, Rwanda, Egypt, Mauritius, and Nigeria. In the run-up to this summit, India will host foreign delegates for around 200 meetings in about 56 cities in India. I would add that it is not probably for India, not only about the G20 presidency, but going forward as a preparation for India at 100, setting the tone for the next 25 years for Amrit Kal, and trying to bring in our narrative, our thoughts, our experiences for global good over the next quarter century. Let me now briefly elaborate some of the key conversations that we are prioritizing in our G20 presidency. First, green development, climate finance, and lifestyle for environment. Climate action and progress on SDGs are 2 sides of the same coin. Mobilization of timely and adequate resources for climate finance, including exploring innovative financing, is important to meet climate challenges. There is a need to set a new collective quantified goal from a floor of $100 billion per year, taking into account the needs and priorities of developing countries. Green and green transition finance, credit enhancement by multilateral development banks through enhancing and expanding their mandate, as well as innovative instruments such as blended finance, viability gap funding, and interest equalization, are the need of the hour. Public finance should be used more to leverage the vastly higher amounts of private finance available in the market. The key thought here is we must recognize that green transition and economic development should can go only hand in hand. One cannot pursue green transition without economic development, and one cannot pursue economic development in a non-green manner. So if we have to achieve growth in today's contemporary context, then it has to be green. And if we have to go green, we cannot do so without development, which is where Honorable External Affairs Minister yesterday also spoke about a green development pact, if I may, so that this basic pillar of thought is recognized and serves as the cornerstone of global economic progress. At the same time, with growing globalization and easier access to resources, circular economy and responsible consumption have acquired greater significance. The principles of lifestyle for environment can be adopted around the world to ensure sustained growth and minimal waste production. From nudging individual and community behavior and responsible consumption and production to sustainable urbanization and circular economy as a business model, a global pro-planet lifestyle movement holds the key to addressing effectively the multiple challenges of climate change, environment degradation, energy crisis, and rapid sustainable growth. In this context, it is welcome news that T20 India has taken up Mission Life as a priority to promote the values for well-being, sustainable consumption, and production. Looking ahead, as perhaps the only large economy with the potential to industrialize without carbonizing, efficiently utilizing large-scale renewable energy, as well as fuels such as green hydrogen, coupled with green ammonia and green shipping, supplemented by technological collaborations and resilient critical material supplies, we aim to set a template for realizing net zero ambitions. And let me elaborate a little bit on this thought, that we have at this stage several countries, in fact most countries have announced their net zero targets, but we cannot do so in a isolated national setting only. It's important to work towards a achievable, realistic, global net zero plan, taking into account various national perspectives, giving policy space, while also moving forward towards a global net zero target. And to do so, it's very important to provide for energy solutions which can address a number of needs of the growing economies, particularly countries like India, those in Africa, and find sustainable solutions for achieving global net zero. So I think we need to scale up our thinking as G20 and work towards sustainable, achievable transitions, utilizing all those resources that we have at our hands, be it energy, be it critical minerals, be it technological collaborations, be it financing, so that we can think strategically and work towards a global net zero in a coordinated and cooperative fashion. The next priority would be accelerated, inclusive, and resilient growth. Challenges faced by our planet can only be addressed with collective resolve followed by robust action that furthers sustainable growth for all stakeholders. From accelerating progress on SDGs, focus on blue economy and trade for growth, to global food security, our endeavor is to ensure G20 serves the long-term interests of all and leaves no one behind. Often, as I said in the beginning, the immediate takes precedence over the longer-term objectives, and in this context, the global debt challenge is going to be perhaps the most pressing immediate concern to which we will have to address either through the common framework and bringing greater commitment and finding ways to cooperate on how to handle the global debt challenge. One of the achievements of G20 was the DSSI in the Saudi presidency, and we will need to work harder to find coordinated framework to address the global debt challenge. On the SDGs, we are at the crucial midpoint of the 2030 agenda, which was adopted in 2015, with cascading and multiple crises threatening a dramatic reversal of progress on achievement of SDGs. The SDG financing gap has been widening, owing to unfavorable macroeconomic conditions, including record inflation and increasing debt burdens. In many ways, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development Goals has got derailed and is in dire need of rescue. In this context, a robust action plan for achieving SDGs halfway on the road to Agenda 2030 is our important priority. Third, technological transformation and digital public infrastructure. developing and harnessing the digital infrastructure will, among other things, define the coming decade. Its use in furthering SDGs and providing easy access to digital payment methods, while ensuring data privacy, will be crucial and relevant to ensure a worldwide digital transformation. Digital public infrastructure and platforms, digital health and tech-enabled digital solutions for development from agriculture to education will be key to harnessing the power of the digital economy to boost growth and development. We believe that digital power has not yet been adequately utilized for global public good, which is why India is focusing so much on digital public infrastructure. We have different models applied across the world. We have in many countries the big tech dominating, in some others the public digital infrastructure being developed. But what we have seen in India is the real power of the digital. As my Sherpa often says, we have achieved in India in 6 or 7 years what it would have taken 50 years to do if the power of the digital economy was not leveraged and fully utilized. So we think that we have a story to share here, which is for a global public good, to bring about financial inclusion. 1.7 billion people in the world are currently financially excluded. And we have seen that financial inclusion has given a boost to Indian economic growth. So the scale and the size of the digital public infrastructure in India could be a template of sorts, with, of course, with national considerations and modifications, which can be used effectively across the world. In particular, therefore, we plan to create a common framework for DPI, for digital public infrastructure, that outlines the core principles for building DPIs: interoperability, scalability, open source platforms, open API, open standards, and privacy based on digital identity system, digital payment system, and intra-country consent-based data sharing system. Fourthly, multilateral institutions for the 21st century. The world urgently needs reformed and effective multilateral institutions to build resilience and deliver solutions for the pressing and evolving challenges of our time, including developmental challenges, poverty, climate change, disaster risk, pandemics, global food security, international conflicts and crises, and terrorism. Adapting to the contemporary world realities necessarily require urgent and comprehensive reform of 21st century institutions to make them more inclusive, representative, and democratic, and to reorient them towards an inclusive, just, and equitable global developmental agenda. The next priority is women-led development. And here, while several other speakers probably before me would have highlighted it, I would add that women as entrepreneurs, as members of the workforce, and as leaders play a critical role in charting the path to prosperity of all societies. Development led by women, by going beyond women's empowerment and bringing women to the core of economic and professional activities, can provide a real impetus to social economic development. Not only should women be empowered more, they should play a strong, equal, and central role in every nation's overall growth. Development can be speedier, more inclusive, and more beneficial when women not only participate, but lead capacity building institutions. When women engage with equal access, capacity, and agency to take decisions, it improves not only their lives, but the lives of their families, communities, and entire societies. Friends, India's G20 presidency has started off quite well. The first Sherpa meeting in Udaipur and the first Finance and Central Bank Deputies meeting in Bengaluru, held last month, helped prepare an inclusive agenda for collective action and outcome-oriented discussions in the G20 for both the Sherpa and the finance tracks. We are also working to provide visiting delegates with a unique Indian experience, showcasing India's diversity, inclusive traditions, cultural richness, and India's strong democratic roots. As Honorable Prime Minister has said, India chairing the G20 presidency is a reflection of the strength of 130 crore Indians. We are therefore taking the G20 to the people. We are making it a Jan Bhagidari or a people's G20. We are involving the private sector, universities, civil societies, and youth in practical activities and bringing out their fresh perspectives on global issues. To sum up, India's G20 presidency is looking to steer G20's action towards finding tangible solutions to contemporary global challenges, inspired by an inclusive and human-centric approach, aided by effective use of technology, and driven by the need for sustainable development for all. If I could try to very briefly put the key underpinnings of our presidency, I would say it is sharing our story, caring for all, and taking collective action. In conclusion, I would like to once again thank and congratulate the T20 team for conducting such a well-attended and successful Inception conference, and I wish them all the very best for their future meetings and deliberations. Thank you.
Let's take a photograph. Yes. We will proceed to our breakout rooms. The rooms are the same as yesterday, no change at all, so you know